we go. All right, all right, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm your host, Nika Sherrill, and this is the ItCast Real Talk on Sex. The ItCast is our community outreach podcast that increases diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we are creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. You can ask us anything. We totally want to hear from you. So click the link in the comments and on the page to go ahead and submit a question. Please ask us anything. We go and get access to our bonus content on our Patreon at patreon.com/Nika Sherrill. You can support the work we're doing here at the ItCast and continue to contribute to this community. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, share with your community, and let's go ahead and dive in. This week's topic is real talk on the autonomy of sex and death. Today in the booth, we have death doula Courtney King. Courtney is a death worker and life coach who helps people through major transitions in their lives. Courtney services as a death worker to include end-of-life logistics, Swedish death cleansing to help folks manage their possessions at the end of their lives, all while keeping compassion, support, and even pleasure in mind. Courtney, go ahead and join us on the show. Welcome.
Oh my God.
Did I catch you off guard?
No, I'm good. Hi.
All right. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for being on the show. This is going to be incredible. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here.
About myself, I started out as a professional organizer, helping people deal with having too much stuff or not enough stuff or the wrong stuff for their lives. And I started that 13 years ago. And over the course of my practice, it kind of veered into dealing with end-of-life logistics and then starting to learn how to work with people who were dealing with grief or like declining health or downsizing, a lot of extreme, and I use extreme in quotes, but extreme situations where your standard real simple magazine is like, yeah, they're not really talking about this topic. So that kind of became the stuff that I specialized in. Okay.
Yeah.
You need some help. So let's help.
That's huge.
Sorry.
No, that's perfect. And it actually brings me very present to, I've had two people, recently in my life, one who was downsizing from this large home up in the Oakland Hills. And I mean, it was like 3 stories of 40 years of life. Like it was dense. And another friend of mine actually passed away, and it took us months to get through like all of her other items and, move things out. And it is an emotional slog to no end.
It is in so many ways. And it's like, what is it? Moving is on the list, like top 5 things that just absolutely suck, no question about it. And then like death is also on the list of top 5 things that absolutely suck, no question about it. So it's like, hi, let's combine the two. We're going to have somebody die and then make you move in the middle of it. Like, no, that is not something you really want to go through. Need backup. And it's okay that you need backup. Please get some backup.
Right. Okay. So tell me about what a death is like.
Wait, about what?
Am I freezing? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Love technology. You're talking about like that support and that backup. And I'm like, okay, so what is a death doula? Like, what is this transition and like this service that you provide?
Oh, I've had clients say that they basically rent my brain. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with death or a major life transition, and like they can be good, they can be bad. It's like, oh, I had a baby. Great. You're welcoming this child into the world and you're bidding farewell to that version of yourself that could go party till 3 a.m. that is a death of that self.
Yeah, I
That
like
stuff may
that.
come back at some point, but that is something that has to be put away for a moment. So like whenever there's a transition up to and including death, there is some form of like grief that happens. It's like, and in that there's a lot of questioning. And sometimes there's like physical impacts. So like your appetite may change, your sleeping patterns may change, especially with a baby. But also if somebody close to you dies. And those things, while small or something that can be easily overlooked or like, oh, I'll just power through this, they also impact your executive function, like your ability to make like long-term plans or think through things in a logical order or something like that. It just wrecks your prefrontal cortex. And you're just like, a decision? What? Right.
Right.
It's on my brain because it's like, okay, we're going to start here.
Yeah.
You are sitting in a chair in a house that has to be emptied. And they're like, oh my God, what? Or, like you need to figure out what in this space is important to you that's coming with you to the space that you're downsizing to. And thinking through things like, these are things that are important to me, but there's no space for, or there's no need for. They're caught up with the excitement, the grief, like consumed with the experience of the move, like, so to think through things.
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, and like, you point to a conversation around sentiment, and then also, the conversation around letting go of someone, like they're logical.
And hold on to them forever.
And I just had a relative in the hospital, and like it was touch and go. And for a week and a half, nothing was logical about my brain. I was like, I can't do hard work right now. Don't ask me any questions. I don't want to do anything. Oh. And it takes something to like carry that, like the emotional labor of that experience. And so I'm hearing that like you really hold space for that. You're like, I got you.
Like off camera, you cannot see the number of candles and things that I have to ground myself after I'm done holding space for people. But yeah, there is a lot of holding space and witnessing, validating, and a lot of times not even trying to fix, at least not right away, like not coming with a plan, but it's like, okay, you need to be listened to, you need to be witnessed, you need to like have these feelings, let it hang out, and like be understood as someone who is grieving. And it's like, oh, don't cry, or oh, it'll be okay. No, it's not going to be okay. And to hold space for that too, like that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be the same. Yeah.
So like,
we have a question in the chat. How did you discover that this was an area you could work in?
By accident. It at least for me, like there are people who are called to it, and maybe I was called to it in a way, but it really did feel like an accident almost, because I was organizing. So like you're used to seeing things like the Home Edit or books by Marie Kondo or articles in Real Simple magazine, like, oh, I can tidy up closets. Yes, I can make kitchens efficient, and yes, I can do those things. But like as I started digging deeper into that, like, I want to do more on closets and kitchens. I want to like get into it. So I actually started learning how to work with people who had hoarding behaviors, which is like a whole different set.
Wait, what was that?
Oh, working with people with hoarding behaviors who hoard.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Go ahead, keep talking.
And that's like, that is a form of organizing, but it's like more like roll up your sleeves, put the hazmat suit on. I have one hazmat suit, and like you're going in. And that's a slightly different set of skills. So like the things that I learned in that usually, like hoarding behaviors never exist in a vacuum. like there's usually some other thing that exists with it. So it's like, hoarding behaviors creep up in parallel with depression, or hoarding behaviors creep up in parallel with cognitive issues like, ADHD or ADD. So like there's something else. So there was a lot of study around cognitive stuff.
Yeah.
But and what I was alluding to with the grief and holding somebody in grief is that while people are used to saying, oh, that person has ADHD, they have been diagnosed by a doctor, there are behaviors that also show up. So like that inability to focus, like, oh, that's ADHD. Like, well, yeah, but no, it's because you haven't slept for 4 days because your boyfriend died. Because like those things that impact your decision-making process and your prefrontal cortex, like they show up as those behaviors.
Yeah.
And there was like this overlap, like, oh, this person isn't diagnosed with anything, they're grieving. But the same tips and tricks that help with brain or cognitive issues help, full stop. It's almost like the curb cuts on sidewalks. They were made for wheelchair accessibility, but strollers can use them. So like the things for ADD work for grief.
Okay. Huh. Okay.
So like, I feel like I just went off on a tangent and I don't even know if I answered the person.
No, 100%, 100%. No, that was great. That was great. They love that analogy, and I do too. Yeah, I mean, it took me a couple of like leaps to figure out, what you were saying, but I think that's really powerful. That like we have these resources and we have these tools, but the fascinating thing is that people are not okay with emotions, like having them, witnessing them, experiencing someone else's emotions.
No.
Like, it's so easy to be like, okay, yeah, that's diagnosable. Like, let's not
clinical. It's over here.
Right. Let's not examine the underneath. And
like, no, like they're the people in the lab coats that are like, this is what you do and this is what you take for it. And then there's like, when you're actually at home with somebody who's driving you up the wall, it's like, how do I manage this?
Yeah.
Like real world.
So that takes a lot of emotional, you take the baggage.
Yeah. I mean, because like there are things, but sometimes it's never just about the things.
Oh, let's talk about the thing.
What do you want to know about?
Oh my God. So yeah. Okay. My biggest fear when I was a kid, and I don't know, well, okay. So my biggest fear when I was a kid was that someone, like I would die and someone would find my sex toys. And I don't know. I was really young. I had makeshift sex toys. I probably wouldn't have known what they were, but I was mortified. And then my grandmother passed away, and I was freaked out because like they watch you from heaven. So then I was like, oh, my grandmother can see me masturbating. I can't do this anymore.
Oh yes, you can. You absolutely
all those parts. So like there's some weird shit with talking about sex, talking about death, like it's
So which part do you want to know about first?
Okay. So that's like, oh God, there's so many. Please just my brain just went 6 different ways.
I know. We talked about so much.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Okay. Well, first, let's talk about like the experience of how you operate with someone's sexuality when you discover it. Because I imagine like, in these homes of like 40, I know there's like stacks of porn. There's got to be stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so how do you deal with that, and how?
Delicately.
Delicately.
I mean, because it's like, how how would you feel if somebody found your stash?
I mean, now I wouldn't care actually, but back then I'd be mortified.
Yeah, but like now if somebody found your stash and was just like, ah, it's like, no. So like not othering it, not making it the taboo thing. It's like it's a thing, whatever. Like finding the stacks of porn, put them all together. Like if I'm bundling things for, packing up to move out, bundling them together so that it can be dealt with responsibly, like not put in a little free library or anything like that. You want to make sure that the porn goes to someone or some institution or thing or into like wherever it's going, that it's not getting into hands that it shouldn't be in.
Oh, that's what you mean by the free library. Okay.
Oh yeah, like wherever you can donate it, but like, would you really go take the stack of Playboys to like? Yeah, no. So you want the porn bundled up together, but like dealing with sex toys, it's a lot of times it depends on the situation, so and the situation can encompass a lot of different things. So like there's downsizing, there's that. And like on the downsizing tip, like there was a situation where there was a woman who had early onset Alzheimer's. And we were downsizing her possessions because they were remodeling the house so that she could maneuver in it with caregivers over time. And this was one of those big house, massive house, one of those places with the giant master suite and the giant bathroom and everything. And we're packing things up for the remodeling crew to come in. And I find the closet. And it's got like her thing. And like, as you work in spaces and encounter enough situations with toys, you start to figure out like which things are in high rotation. Like you can tell which ones are the favorites.
That's fair. That's fair.
High up on the shelf, no, like this one. So I'm like packing things up, and I make a point to like leave the favorites accessible on top of the box. And the woman's caretaker came in and saw what I was packing, and I'm tagging it with the date and what it is and what room it should go in after the remodel. And the caretaker's like, oh, and is like, we can just throw those away. And I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Right.
Because even with this woman having early onset Alzheimer's, she still has 1, autonomy, 2, sexuality.
Right.
Like that's just part of this whole existing in a body thing.
Right.
Whatever forms that sexuality is. She might be, like demisexual or ace or whatever, but like whatever that is, that's her sexuality. And she's the one that gets to determine how that's expressed. And if it's with her playing with these go for it. And 3, this woman has early onset Alzheimer's. She is about to walk a hellish path. She needs every bit of sweetness she has accessible to her. And her own body should be accessible to her. If these are the tools for that, so be
it. I love that. And the thing that frustrates me is that we do a lot of desexualizing. Like that whole like, oh, when you reach a certain age, you shouldn't necessarily be out there behaving. And it's like, no, we are human. Having a human experience in this body, and this body likes pleasure. Okay. Like this, I don't know if you noticed or not being in one of these meat suits, but it likes it. Mm-hmm.
That's how this goes.
Yeah.
So like, don't go taking that from people. Don't go making those decisions for people. Right. And it's like, yeah. And I felt weird. And like after I like went off on the that poor caretaker. After I went off on the caretaker, she kind of blinking like, oh. I don't know what came over me. But I was at it like, no, you can't do it dirty like that.
Right.
don't do this woman dirty. She's already dealing with enough.
Oof, no kidding. And like, so I actually don't know. I don't know if this is a valid statement or not, but I have heard that sexuality can be one of the last things to like leave during like in terms of like dementia and Alzheimer's. And so like allowing access to that. I mean, it makes such a huge difference. Oh,
Oh, honey.
oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the chat, we have, I was so embarrassed by my dad watching porn when he was sick with Parkinson's. I'm sad I didn't just let him be.
Yeah. And these are things you learn. I mean, like, it's something you kind of come to over time. I'm not intended, Jesus Christ. But it is. It's something that you come around to over time, like experiencing the situations. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, a lot of times that first experience when you come up against sexuality in someone that you're not used to seeing sexual expression in, or a population you see sexual expression in, it's a relative or somebody close to you. So there's kind of this dual-sided shock, like, oh, someone over this age / in this state should not be experiencing sexuality. Oh, my parents should not be experiencing sexuality. Right. So like it's a double, like a 2-for-1, and you're just like, ah, and there's that reaction. And then like after the fact, there's that kind of like, oh, right. And it's a thing. It happens.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting because, like, I remember the very first time when I discovered my parents were human. Like,
what? Flesh and blood?
Like, for real? And that's part of like actually building the compassion and having the compassion for other people's experiences, their autonomy, their right to life, like however they choose to live it. Yeah.
Part of it like that, when you go in, and like a large part of my practice is holding space for people, it's holding space for that too. Like just, okay, this is human. This is what it is like to human.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like, I think the first time I ever found someone else's sex toy, it was before I started my practice, before like this era of my life happened, but it was my grandma. Oh no. Shall I go on?
I mean, like those again. What I love conversationally about this is that we are talking about the validity and the actuality of people, especially women, like being able to experience and have pleasure and have sex at whatever age. And there's a part of me that's like, I wish I had found my grandmother's sex toys. First off, it wouldn't have made me feel so weird. And second, like, how validating like is that to know that she got to experience and enjoy that? Like, there's a whole, and some women don't. Some women never.
They really don't.
But yes, please continue. Grandma's sex toys. That's what we should have titled this episode. Grandma's sex toys.
But no, like starting, like the first house, even before I became an organizer, like my first experience was my grandmother received a diagnosis, and my mother like was coming down to help shut down the house because grandma was coming to move in with mom and dad. So Ma goes down, and grandma had been in that house like for 45, 50 years. Like they moved in that house, I think in 1962. And at that point, yeah, it was like more than 50 years. But we go down, like mom calls for help because she's just like, this is too much. I cannot do it. So I go and I'm very methodical, just like, okay, we're going to shut down the house and go through these spaces. And um, my grandmother's sisters, my great aunts, were also there keeping her company and kind of keeping her, held as we're shutting her house down around her. And I get into the master suite and I'm in the bathroom and I'm starting to unearth the toys. And this was before I had learned things. And I'm just like, oh, go ahead, grandma.
Right there, that part.
Yeah, it's like, I ain't mad at you. And then my mom comes in as I'm unearthing this. And this is where I saw the generational disconnect, because my mother was like, ah, this is terrible. And I look at mom without thinking, like, why? Why is this terrible? I'm sorry, what did I miss? I don't understand the problem here.
Right, right.
So I keep pulling things and I keep like more and more toy. And these are like, one, multiples, but two, like, I saw eras of toys. So like, saw things that you would see like in the antique vibrator museum at Good Vibes. And I was like, oh,
yep.
So like, not only was grandma taking care of herself, she'd been taking care of herself. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
The part of the story they don't tell you.
No, like she's been getting it done. Like, yes, grandma, yes.
Yes. And as we point to, should have the right to keep getting it done. Like, however they choose.
Autonomy bit. It's like,
right, that part.
Get to choose. You get to choose how you interact with the meat suit.
I think I'd feel more comfortable with my mom's sexuality than my dad's. Interesting. Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
I mean, women do tend to, I shouldn't say this, but like get away with more. Like, lesbians are okay, but gay men have still like the work there. We're like, yeah, we're there, I think. But I don't think it's I think that makes sense.
Having trouble finding Playboys rather than finding my mom's vibes. I could see that. Yeah. Cause like I have worked with clients who were guys and found male relatives stash as well. And again, it's like, I was not sure of my awkwardness in those situations, in the male relative situations, are because they are male relatives of mine. So there's a gender skewing happening.
Right.
I don't even know what the phrasing would be around that. With male clients, it's much more like there's some I can put professional distance in there, like, oh, I can be very clinical about this because I have no emotional attachment to a relationship with this person. This is just the thing. So yeah.
I wonder also if having someone of the same sex or gender would in like the discovery and experience of those items. I mean, I kind of think about like, like, do I want a male or a female doctor? And I'm like, well, do I want someone who's cleaning my house who understands why I have a toy that looks like that versus someone who doesn't?
Yeah.
Yeah. Relatability, familiarity. So yeah.
That part's real. That part is very real.
Let's talk about autonomy. And I'm certain, I apologize out there, we will not be talking about, what's the word I want to use?
Oh no.
Yeah, no, we will not be talking about that in this episode. I get that it's titled Sex and Death, and this is...
Oh no, we are not talking about necrophilia. That has nothing to do with my practice. I apologize if that is what you are here for. Have a wonderful day.
That part, right there. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I didn't even think about it until you said it, like, oh shit, no, sorry.
Don't want to be misleading. Should have put that disclaimer at the beginning.
All right. Wow. Okay.
But no, so getting around to the actual conversation around like death and the autonomy of death, I think that's something that can be very challenging for people to like sit and think about. Like, oof, I can't, even though these moments where I'm like, okay, I can think about how some of this will go, but when I really sit down and my life and what that looks like, there's a lot there. So
Where would you like to, at what point would you like to start digging? It's like, because there's a whole bunch of different angles to go in on this.
I mean, I
Uh,
mean, um, let's talk about the discomfort of talking about it. You know, like we talked about
of
money.
death?
What?
Oh,
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, yes, of death. We talked about, you know, that correlation with money, that correlation with sex. Like there's things that it's uncomfortable to talk about. And so like, yeah, go like talk about just the discomfort around it.
well, no. Nobody likes to, I'm not going to say nobody because, like, of course, there's going to be somebody like, I like to think about it. But, like, overall, death is not something that gets brought up in polite company. I'll use polite company as the stand in for, like, everybody or nobody. But that it's like, oh, you don't bring death up at, Easter dinner. Hey, let's talk about death. Like, even though it's a holiday centered around death, theoretically.
Right, right.
But no, because we're talking about life in the midst of death. You always feel that need to counter death with life. But death is a part of life. Um, like parts of your life die off, parts of culture die off, things die in order for new things to come in. That is a thing. But there's a lot of discomfort around talking about it. Because in that, there's a lot of discomfort around acknowledging our own finite existence, like our existence here, whatever that is. And it's almost like if you say it, it'll happen. No, talking about death won't bring death. Death will come anyway. Not talking about it isn't going to keep it away. It's
Fair.
fair. So like, and there's how do I put this? There's like an understanding of death as just this one big thing lurking out there, when really what I've learned in working with various clients is that there's a series of smaller goodbyes and deaths that happen that lead up to death.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the questions around autonomy and accessibility of sex and or pleasure when / if sex becomes physically inaccessible, like that, those series of goodbyes are things where being able to control your own wishes, and like express your own desires is useful. Does that make any sense? I feel like I talked in a circle.
No. No, that is, you know, that's it's valid, you know. I think about the cycle, like that you pointed out, and it's like, you know, like I don't see flowers get sad to wilt, but but like we have so many moments, you know, in our own experience where like that deaths leading up to death, like I've had that experience where I'm like, oh my God, that part of me had to die off so that this part of me could exist.
Yeah.
And like letting go, and like, you know, they say like letting go of the things that hold you back, or, you know, it's like sometimes it's just letting go of the life you had.
Yeah.
And like that does take some grieving and some mourning. It's its own experience.
I see you. No, I mean, like that part is real. And like, I mean, like, actually, I'm going to talk about the client I've got now, where she is actively dying. And she has a degenerative disorder. So things are happening. And like this client has taught me a lot around a lot of things when it comes to life. So like And like even when like our first conversation, um, she was still very up and functioning and like on with it, and was like, I think maybe within the first 15 minutes, she was like, if I need a feeding tube, just I'll take assisted like medical aid in dying then. I don't want to have to deal with a feeding tube. And then one of the first things in her body to start to fail was her swallow reflex. So then she's like, I would like to revisit this. And I'm like, you absolutely can. Like, that is part of having sovereignty over this. You
Yes.
can say, oh, I thought I wanted this to happen, but really, I'd like to think about this again. It's like, yes, let's have a conversation about it. Like, what is important about that? And like, we talked about the pleasure of dining, like good meals, like just have like, and not everybody gets that pleasure out of eating. I will acknowledge that, but she did. So for her to say goodbye to that, because she has been on pretty much a liquid diet ever since. So that, and that's what I was thinking about, like, because that is an avenue of pleasure for her that is now inaccessible. So like, what was it about that experience that gave her pleasure? And she's like, oh, the smells, like the texture, the satisfaction of being full. And it's like, okay, how can we find those components of that experience? So like letting her, like having somebody cook something awesome, and then like maybe pureeing something that she can manage. So like, putting some juice, like the juice from the steak in with the caramelized onions, puree that, and then like put that down. Like, is it mowing down on a steak? No, but there's pleasure in it. So like there's that question of accessibility as your bodily functions are like, nope, not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why I do want to be cognizant when I talk about like people absolutely are sexual and have like their own sexual expression, but there are points at which your body will go, nope, not doing that anymore. You got to be real with that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, going even further, with the, hold up, were you about to say something?
No, I'm listening.
This part was ostensibly about organization, because at this point she's downsized and is working with limited space. And it's like, okay, I have this closet, I have this chest of drawers, I have this drawer for my underwear, and it's not working for me anymore. It's like, okay, tell me what's not working in the space. And she's like, well, I don't have room for my incontinence briefs. Like, okay. And then she starts talking about, well, I haven't really worn my fancy panties in like 6 months. I don't think I'm gonna wear those anymore. So then, even though it's about the thing, the objects in the drawer, there's more going on. Like, there's stuff not being said that's like very clear. So then it's like, okay, let's talk about bodily control and incontinence. Like, this is you letting go of fancy panties on the one hand and making space for things, but on the other, it's you acknowledging and like saying goodbye to bodily control, like being able to manage your like urination, defecation, like you can't anymore.
One of the things that you pointed out was, just losing your youth.
Yeah.
And in her case in particular, like the sexiness of that, and like just the way that it may, not just the object, but the way the object makes you feel. Like,
yeah, like that part. And we talked some about that. Like, do you want to keep the fanciest pair as like a talisman
Mm.
Like, but at that point it changes, because it's not that she's keeping them to put them on.
Right.
That's a hazard. But she's keeping them as a reminder of that part of herself, of that part of her sexuality. In which case, this is an example that I bring up with clients as well. The purpose of an object can change. So the panties aren't panties anymore. The panties are a reminder. The panties are a placeholder. So no, like they might not go in the underwear drawer at that point. They might go someplace else where she, like, in a box right next to the bed or something. But like their role has changed. They are no longer undergarments. They're a thing.
Yeah.
That's sentimental and very significant to her. But yeah, that's like such a downer. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And it ties together, the context of this conversation is like, it's something that we don't think about, like we think about, like, and I've had conversations where we talk about like aging, we talk about how the body changes and these different things that it does, but like really like coming to that point where you're letting go of those things, of those parts it's a different conversation. It's a different conversation for like, let me be empowered around like, versus like,
how do you say goodbye to that?
Right.
And how do you hold space for somebody to say goodbye to that with some form of dignity?
Right.
Like, how do you not turn that into something that strips them of their dignity?
Yeah. And that not shaming and otherizing and desexualizing, like that's the part, like that's what robs people of their dignity. Yes. So like not doing that makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
You are still valid. You are still sexy in whatever form sexy is now.
Yeah.
Like, we're just gonna work with that, okay?
And
involve this. Sexy now involves something else. So like as your body's capacity changes, that's going to change as well. Be ready.
Yes. And then, doubling back to the hoarding part and, the sentimental items. When I started going through my things, like, it was this crazy experience. Like you said, like the things aren't things. It was like, I actually had to work through my emotional baggage to let go of some of that stuff. And there is like, even before we get to that place of, like I'm downsizing because at the end of my life, just going through and like cleansing and clearing those things actually like gets the emotional noise. Like it gets the energy feedback. It calms it down to be able to not have the parts that don't work for you.
They're like, people talk a lot of words. A lot of times people will talk about the power of naming. When I talk about how an object will change, the object changes. So it's no longer panties. It's a reminder of who you are. It's no longer a wrench that you use to work on things. It's a reminder of your father's function as a mechanic. Like it's a memento, not a tool. Like that shift.
Yeah.
Going through your things and naming them. Like, what is this? What role does this have in my life? Why do I have it? Like, what is its significance? And naming that, name it clearly, name it accurately. And to like be able to say like, oh, I am holding on to this because it represents blank. That clear, like even if you can't get rid of the object, if you can have that clarity around why that object is in your life, that is like half the battle right there.
Yes. So much difference. Yes.
Like if you could just tell me what's up with this. We're there.
But yeah, we're not gonna get down that rabbit hole.
Oh,
Real talk on sex and hoarding.
good, good. We totally could.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you mentioned something a little bit ago. You said medical aid in dying, and I actually want to let's talk about that a bit to create for people what that means.
Okay. I am speaking for California because I am in California right now. So medical aid in dying is what it says. It is medical aid for the process of dying. My current client with the degenerative disorder has that on deck because she does not wish to die locked in. Locked in is when you lose the ability to engage with the outside world, like lost speech, lost. You might still be able to hear. Hearing sticks around for a while, but you've lost the ability to connect with and engage with people meaningfully. You're a vegetable. So being able to determine at which point your life ends. Hello, autonomy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Bodily sovereignty.
Yeah.
So it is legal in the state of California. Compassionandchoices.org, I think, is the website for California. And it might be for the national organization. I don't have my materials here because I'm in a different spot, so I can't really speak.
Can you repeat that? Is it compassion in or
and compassion and choices? Oh, compassion and choices.
And choices. Got it. Okay. Beautiful.
Yes. But again, I don't have my stuff with me because I'm not in my office, as you can tell.
Quite all right. Quite all right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is legal in California. I want to make sure that part is clear. But you have to get a medical professional to sign off on it and issue the prescription for it. It is a prescription. And then you have to administer it. And if you are in a condition where you physically cannot administer, there are other things that can be done, like working with your doctor. One thing that is legal in all 50 states, the acronym is MAID, or no, MAID is medical aid in dying. VSED, VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. That is something that is legal in all 50 states, where someone can decline nutrition, decline hydration. And that is not as fast as medical aid in dying, go figure. But I'm sorry, I get
no.
But it's not. It takes up to 2 weeks for it to happen. And people say, oh, well, they're going to die. And it's yes, that is why people voluntarily stop eating and drinking. It allows them to access that act within places where medical aid in dying is not legal. It still gives them some sense of autonomy. And again, I'd almost say it comes in a bit more because it's yes, I am choosing to not eat. It is someone deciding not done.
Right.
And I've seen people do it. People have heard stories yeah, I'm done. I'm tapping out.
Yeah.
Oh, no more. No, I'm good.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to have say in that, huge.
Yeah. Yeah, you have the right. You have the right to how you live and complete your life. Yeah. Beautiful. Oh my God. I know. We went all the places.
Where else you want to go?
Well, please tell us how we can find more information about you. You.
My website is C King Solutions, like my name, like the letter C, King, and it's a terrible pun, but I like it. C King Solutions, all one word. .com.
That's memorable. And also, I didn't put it together. I love that.
It's subtle, but it's right. SeekingSolutions.com.
Oh my God, I love it.
But yeah, like I'm on, like I have a Twitter account, I have an Instagram account, but I have a love-hate relationship with social media. So I'm like, Um, I do also have a Patreon where I like jump into a lot of the really heady concepts around my work.
A lot of really what concepts?
Heady concepts. So like,
Heady. Okay. Okay, got it.
oh yeah, I type out a bunch of theories and talk about actually, yeah, like right now I'm doing a series on death, like how to clean and shut down the home of someone who has died, with like big essays on that. So like, yeah, I'm around on the web.
I love it. I love it. So people can find you at C King, cking.com.
SeekingSolutions.com.
Seekingsolutions.com, seekingsolutions.com. And they can find you and bring you in for your work. Yeah, I love it. I love
Like
it.
I coach people. I coach people through dying, which yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. But in coaching people through the question, how would you like to die? You wind up coaching people through the question, how would you like to live?
Yeah.
So
Yes. Oh my God. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. I love that. Thank you for being on the show. This
thanks
is
for asking. This is fun.
yes. And like thank you for the work you do. Oh my God. Yes. Yes. We have some hellos from the audience. Hey, Daniel. Mwah. Anybody else out there, thank you so much for watching with us. And oh, Courtney,
Oh,
thank
like
you.
thank you. Like I'm still learning how to talk about this in any meaningful way. So like thank you for giving me a chance to do that.
Absolutely. Oh, oh. All right. All right. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This is the It Cast, our community outreach podcast that increases diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we are creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. Feel free to ask us anything. We want to hear from you. You can go ahead and click the links in the comments, chats, bios, link tree, all that to submit your questions and let us know what you want to talk about. Get access to our bonus content on Patreon. We have our link is patreon.com/Nika Sherelle, and we've been posting some amazing uncut raw footage from our early days. So if you want to see how we've grown and come through this process, please check us out over there. A lot of fun. And learn more about our work at theitcast.com. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and share with your community. We will see you next week.